Elizabeth Harrow had never been challenged like this before. Her heels clicked across the polished floor of Novatech's boardroom, a sound that had become her personal signature of dominance. At 32, she was young, brilliant, and feared in the tech world. Her reputation preceded her, a woman who could negotiate million-dollar deals with a smile that concealed razor-sharp intentions. But today was different. Today she faced Arthur Whitmore, an investor whose influence in the industry was nearly mythic. 74. With decades of accumulated wealth and a mind as sharp as a surgeon's scalpel, he had reduced CEOs far older and more experienced than her to nervous wrecks. Elizabeth extended her hand, a polite yet controlled gesture. But as he moved to meet it, she pulled back subtly, a micro-expression that no one but someone like Arthur could detect. He paused, his dark eyes narrowing, scanning her like a predator assessing prey. "I prefer to avoid handshakes," she said smoothly, her voice perfectly measured, hiding the faint tremor in her pulse. The room went silent. Her assistants, handpicked for their loyalty, exchanged uneasy glances. Arthur's smile was thin and unreadable. "Interesting," he said. "We'll see if your actions match that confidence." Elizabeth's mind raced. She had prepared for every question, every objection, every possible angle, yet there was something about him, a weight in his presence, that made the air feel heavy and suffocating. Her eyes darted briefly to the contract lying on the mahogany table, the deal that could launch her latest AI project into uncharted heights or bury her startup under an avalanche of debt. Arthur spoke again, his voice low and calm. "I've built empires on trust and integrity, Ms. Harrow, and I always remember those who disrespect the process, or the people who make it possible." Elizabeth's heartbeat quickened. Her usual strategies, her smooth charm, the carefully calculated intimidation, she wielded in boardrooms around the globe. It all felt useless here, yet she maintained her composure, leaning back slightly, keeping her expression neutral. "We all have our ways of conducting business," she said, a hint of steel in her voice. He leaned forward, eyes locking onto hers. "And some ways come with consequences. Consider this a lesson." Elizabeth left the meeting feeling triumphant. In her mind, she had maintained control. But that night, alone in her penthouse overlooking the city, unease crept in. Emails she hadn't sent appeared in her inbox. Strange phone calls with only static on the other end disturbed her sleep. Security footage showed subtle anomalies she couldn't explain. And then the messages began, brief, cryptic, and increasingly personal. "Trust is everything," they read. "Respect is earned." At first, she brushed them off, attributing them to overactive imagination. But the feeling of being watched lingered, gnawing at her confidence. She found herself double-checking locks, inspecting every corner of her luxury apartment, questioning her own sense of reality. Her empire, built painstakingly with intelligence and ruthlessness, suddenly felt fragile. The next morning, Elizabeth walked into the Novatech office and found her assistant trembling. The server room had been accessed overnight, but nothing had been stolen. Instead, someone had left a single envelope, stamped in black wax. Inside was a note. "Meet me at the old pier, 8 p.m., come alone." Or risk losing everything. Panic surged through her, but she masked it behind a mask of professionalism. She had a choice: ignore it and risk financial ruin, or confront the shadow of the man she had underestimated. Pride warred with fear, yet her instinct screamed that refusing could cost her more than just money. It could cost her legacy, her freedom, perhaps even her life. By dusk, she found herself at the pier, the fog rolling off the water in thick, ghostly waves. Arthur Whitmore stepped from the shadows, his silhouette imposing, his cane tapping the ground with deliberate rhythm. "You came," he said simply, almost approvingly. Elizabeth swallowed hard, trying to summon her usual arrogance, but it faltered under the weight of his gaze. I don't understand what you want," she said, voice tight. He studied her for a long moment before speaking. "Respect. That's all. Respect for experience, for wisdom, for the people who paved the way you now walk on. You refuse it and the cost can be high." Her mind raced. The man before her was calm, yet she felt a current of power that could obliterate her carefully built life. She realized that her small act of defiance yesterday had triggered a chain reaction, and now she was trapped in a game she had underestimated. Arthur extended his hand slowly, deliberately. The invitation was not just symbolic, it was a test. Elizabeth hesitated, her instincts screaming. She knew what was at stake. Pride, ego, power, they all demanded she hold back. But survival demanded otherwise. She swallowed, knelt slightly under the weight of inevitability, and took his hand. The grip was firm, unyielding, and in that instant, Elizabeth understood the stakes of underestimating a man like Arthur Whitmore. The world shifted subtly, something unspoken had changed, and she knew deep down that her life and her empire would never be the same again. The next morning, Elizabeth's office was a storm of activity. Her usual composure had fractured overnight. Investors, partners, employees, they sensed the change, though none could articulate it. Her assistant, careful not to overstep, left her a voicemail that trembled with concern. Even the cleaning staff avoided her office more than usual, whispering about strange occurrences at the building. Elizabeth had learned a lesson she could never unlearn. Power without humility was a fragile construct. Every decision, every negotiation, every handshake mattered. And Arthur Whitmore had taught her, in a single calculated encounter, that defiance carried consequences far beyond her imagination. Weeks passed and Novatech's board meetings shifted subtly. Elizabeth was no longer the untouchable, untamed force she once was. She still commanded attention, but there was a measured caution in her demeanor, a quiet respect for forces larger than herself. The AI project, once her crown jewel, progressed smoothly now, but she never again ignored the human element, the wisdom and experience of those around her. Then came the day that shocked her beyond recovery. Arthur Whitmore appeared at Novatech's headquarters unannounced, smiling, calm, unthreatening, yet impossible to ignore. "I wanted to see the results of our lessons," he said. Elizabeth's breath caught. The boardroom went silent as he addressed the assembled executives, recounting in precise terms the importance of respect, foresight, and humility in business. He singled her out not to embarrass, but to demonstrate the transformation she had undergone. "Ms. Harrow," he said, "your growth is promising. Remember this. Respect is earned, not taken." Her cheeks flushed, but it was not shame alone. Relief mingled with the sting of realization. She had underestimated him, and for the first time in her life, Elizabeth Harrow had truly learned the meaning of accountability. That night, alone in her penthouse once more, Elizabeth reflected on the path that had brought her here. The emails, the cryptic notes, the shadowy presence at the pier, it had all been a masterclass in control and influence, and she had survived barely, because she chose to humble herself even if just a fraction. A knock at the door startled her. She opened it to find a small, elegant package. Inside was a single business card and a note. "The future belongs to those who understand power, yes, but also respect. We'll meet again, Ms. Harrow." Elizabeth smiled faintly, a mixture of fear and exhilaration coursing through her veins. She had been humbled, scared, and yet awakened to a new level of insight. The world of high-stakes business had just revealed one of its most brutal truths. Ego could open doors, but respect determined whether you could walk through them safely. From that day forward, Elizabeth never again underestimated anyone. Every handshake, every nod, every glance carried meaning. And though she would remain a force in the corporate world, she had learned the most shocking lesson of all, that sometimes a single refusal, a hand not shaken, could threaten everything you had built, and the act of humbling yourself could save not only your empire but your very life. Arthur Whitmore became a silent partner in her journey, a shadow she never saw but always felt, a reminder that power was only as secure as the respect you earned. Elizabeth Harrow had entered the boardroom as a queen. She left it ultimately wiser, tempered, and profoundly aware that even the mightiest could fall in a heartbeat. The incident became legend in Novatech, whispered in corridors, studied in boardrooms across the world. CEOs who once scoffed at her methods now approached with caution, wondering how she had changed so drastically overnight. And Elizabeth herself understood that the lesson was eternal. Pride could destroy, but humility, even when enforced by fear, could build an empire, stronger than any contract, stronger than any technology, stronger than any single human ambition. In the end, she had learned what no textbook could teach. The world did not bend to brilliance alone. It responded to wisdom, respect, and the courage to admit when you were wrong, even if it meant begging, even if it meant swallowing pride, even if it meant taking the hand you had once refused.